Hello everyone. This video is on the beginnings of the Roman people. Now, the traditional founding of the Roman people, the legend of the traditional founding at least, has been around for a long time. However, it wasn't written down. There was no real records or documents of anything about the Roman people before 300 BC or so. So kind of in the middle of Roman history, it's kind of a weird place to go, but in the middle of Roman history, this guy named Virgil, he went ahead and wrote a national epic, an epic poem about the history of the Roman people. And the Romans were really influenced by the Greeks, and the Greeks had two national epics, two epic poems, and these were called the Iliad and the Odyssey. Those two poems are, and the Greeks, that's a topic for a different video, but Virgil wanted to use those two poems as a kind of prototype, I guess. He patterned his story after them. And his story, he called it the Aeneid. And the reason why it was called the Aeneid is because it was named after a guy named Aeneas. Right here. Aeneas. And it's this guy right here. Obviously not the other guy that's getting killed, or else there wouldn't be an Aeneid, I guess. So he wrote the Aeneid between 29 and 19 BC. Now, obviously, that's hundreds of years after this whole thing happened. So there's obviously the accuracy isn't going to be really, complete. I guess it's not going to be a valid story. It's not going to be a true historical document, but it does reflect on the history of Rome and where the Romans came from. So here's a picture of Virgil, the Roman poet Virgil, with the Aeneid in his hands, and he's reciting to Caesar Augustus the story of Aeneas. And this is his sister, and she fainted because the story was so amazing, I guess. And of course, Caesar Augustus was an emperor. He was the first emperor during the Roman Empire. This is at the height of the Roman Empire, I guess, when they had control over most of the Mediterranean. And the Aeneid kind of fulfilled, Romans' desire to connect to something noble, to have pride in their past, like the Greeks did. Now, obviously, the Aeneid and works like the Iliad and the Odyssey are different because the Aeneid was made to kind of retrospectively made to show Roman greatness, while the Greek works, the Iliad and the Odyssey, they were written right at the beginning of actual Greek civilization. So it kind of grew with the Greeks, while this was kind of embellished and kind of molded to fit what Romans wanted to hear. Anyways, let's move on to the history, or the travels of Aeneas and his story. Okay, so Aeneas, he was actually a Trojan. Of course, what I'm about to say, this is all according to the Aeneid and legend, so this isn't hard fact, but it, like I said, it kind of represents or reflects what may have actually happened, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Aeneas lived at this time, 1183, and at that time, that was the end of the Trojan War. Now, if you remember the Trojan War, it was between the Greeks and the city of Troy, or the Trojans. And of course, the Greeks were this area here. Athens is like right there. They attacked Troy, and by 1183 BC, they're about to completely destroy Troy. So Aeneas fled with his family, his aging father up here, his young son, and his wife. Um, Unfortunately, his wife perished, so she's out of the picture, and it was just them. And they left. Uh, they left Troy in a ship, and they started to travel around. Now, this journey of theirs kind of reflects the Odyssey. How Odysseus traveled from Greece, and for whatever reason, took him like 10 or 20 years to get back from Troy to his home. Anyways, so they kind of bounced around until they got to this place called Carthage. Now, and on their way they encountered things similar to what Odysseus encountered. Like I think they both encountered the same Cyclops Island, and I think even Aeneas even ran into some of Odysseus's old troops that were stuck on the island of the Cyclops. Anyways, when they reached Carthage, Carthage was a nation in its own right, and it was ruled by a queen, Queen Dido. I think that's how you spell it, Queen Dido, and she kind of fell in love with Aeneas, and her husband was long passed away, and so they kind of formed a partnership and were basically married without the actual contract. And they had a good life until Aeneas was reminded of his destiny. And through this journey, there's just like the Greek Iliad, there's various gods or whatnot, and they had informed Aeneas that he had a destiny, and his destiny was to settle, the land of Italy and start the Romans. Anyways, he was reminded of that destiny, even though he was living comfortably with his partner, and so he realized he had to go. He couldn't stay with her. He eventually told her and left her to go to the main land of Italy, and she was heartbroken, of course. And as he was leaving, she committed suicide, and he could see the fumes of the smoke leaving her remains, I guess. And so he knew that she had committed suicide. Anyways, but I guess he just moved on to better things. And somewhere along this journey, as he's traveling to Italy, he actually goes to the underworld. And kind of ironically, he sees Princess Dido there, or Queen Dido, and she just ignores him or whatever. But through that journey in the underworld, he comes to see more of the destiny of Rome, of what he will found, his people, I guess, because Aeneas actually doesn't found Rome, the city. He just kind of founds the beginnings of the Roman people. I'll explain a little bit more about that. So anyways, he lives here for a little bit. His father dies, and he eventually travels over here. And he meets the Latins, the kingdom of the Latins. And they live in a city called Alba Longa, which doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. But and there he meets the king. I think it's King Latin, and he has a daughter, and that daughter is going to be married to this other guy, and then this other guy is going to become king of the Latins. And Aeneas, it's his destiny to kind of become king, so he tries to win her over, and eventually a war breaks out, a civil war where Aeneas and his band fight against the other guy and his band, and they both try to become king of the Latins, and marry this this princess, I guess. And this is what this picture is about. Aeneas is standing over his enemy, and this is near the end of the war. and he slays him and becomes king of the Latins and marries the princess. And he starts a city called Lavinium right here, the screen dot. Whoops. He starts a city called Lavinium and rules the Latins, or the kingdom of Alba Longa, I guess, from Lavinium. And him and his descendants continue to rule in that area for, the next 400 years, or this time period right here. So now this second part of the Aeneid is similar to the Iliad because it reflects, or it shows, well, the Iliad was about the Greek war with Troy, the Trojan War. And similar to that, there's a war here, and that was kind of like the war part. And the journey here is kind of sorry, I'm kind of unorganized right here, but this right here is similar to the Odyssey, and then this right here is similar to the Iliad. Anyways, that's the Aeneid, right? In just a few minutes right there. So you may be wondering, why is this important to me? If this really all didn't happen. Well, like I said, the specifics probably didn't happen. However, the time frame and the general things that happened were actually, historically somewhat accurate. And let me show you a few examples. Who knows whether a guy named Aeneas actually lived, or a Queen Dido. We don't know. There's no solid record. However, archaeological evidence has shown that the people of Alba Longa were, they're heavily influenced by the Greeks. They probably could have been Greeks, probably were Greeks, or ancient Greeks at least, that came from, who knows if they came from Troy or if they were Trojans. That could have been just the Romans' way to tie into, the great story of the Iliad. However, the early peoples were probably descended from Greeks, or had heavy influence with them. And the city of Alba Longa did exist. There was a kingdom of Alba Longa, and it did correspond with this time frame. And I'm not going to cover in this video, but Aeneas's descendant, Romulus, left the city of Alba Longa and founded Rome. And Rome is supposedly named after Romulus, though there's also debate about that too. But and that was 753 BC is when Romulus founded Rome. And there is archaeological evidence that people from the Alba Longa area moved to Rome and started a settlement there. So, like I said, whether the people themselves are actually real characters, or if they, I haven't seen any Cyclopses recently, but the basic idea, the basic concept seems to be fairly accurate. Well, there's the video. I'll see you guys later.